That's the main conversation. We're also, though, seeing these companies becoming much more interested in like us helping them figure out how to think about the world of borderless talent.
Right.
So how should they think about the countries they want to operate in, the kind of projects they can work with contractors versus needing full-time, the kind of roles that would work with contractors versus full-time. So we spend a lot of time sitting down with enterprise companies and saying, here is your roadmap. Let's talk through your talent strategy more broadly, because we can usually help them accelerate that roadmap by 20-something% while reducing costs by 30 to 40. And so you can enable meaningfully more projects to get done, and therefore more productivity and output for the company.
Has the kind of talent you're onboarding changed? Do you mostly bring in engineers who are already skilled, have experience, or do you still have a training aspect of the people you onboard and then move them on to your clients?
So at any given point, there are still 10 to 15,000 software developers around the world who are receiving training from Andela or leveraging Andela to advance their careers. At this point, there are about 500,000, as I mentioned, software developers across Africa. We've had about 175,000 through our training programs.
Wow.
So there's still a meaningful training component, but the majority of people who are accepted into the Andela talent network now actually weren't trained by Andela. We've now gotten to a level of scale where most people coming in have 3 to 5 years of experience,
right,
and an expertise in a specific area. And in that area, they're looking for a chance to prove themselves on a global stage. They want to show the world that brilliance is evenly distributed, but they also want to be paid commensurate with that ability. And so we help them find the best job for them, in some ways like a talent agent. We help them in terms of putting together the team where they're going to be most effective, and we help them to find the company where they're going to be most valued, but also where they're going to have the biggest impact.
You have made 2 recent acquisitions this year, Qualified, which is a talent assessment skills platform, and Kasana, based out of Munich. What is the thinking around these 2? First, what do they do? How do they fit into your overall business strategy?
Yeah, totally. Kasana was an expansion into Germany and into, more broadly, like the European talent ecosystem. And so they were a talent marketplace, somewhat similar to Andela, where we were able to just help them accelerate much faster, but also build out infrastructure there on the ground faster as a result of their network. In Qualified, it was a bit more complicated. Qualified is and was the highest quality technical assessment platform on the internet. It was also the highest rated technical assessment platform. And so hundreds of companies, Apple, Facebook, many others, have used it to assess talent coming into the company to understand who they want to hire, and then how to understand the existing talent base at that company. And so for us, it gave us a more data-driven way to understand the existing talent base at our client companies and help recommend talent using data that would raise the bar on what they were already able to do. And so long term, we win when data wins. Like Andela wins when we can show the world not just that, yes, like anecdotally, brilliance is evenly distributed, but actually from a data-driven standpoint, brilliance is evenly distributed. And Qualified is a major step on that journey for us to be able to much more broadly and really cost-effectively help companies understand what their current talent looks like, what they're able to bring in, and then also what Andela talent looks like in comparison to that. And so we're seeing companies use us now just for assessing their incoming talent, even if they don't work with our talent. They can do that now through Qualified. They also can use it to assess their own talent, just to understand and get a benchmark for where they are and the skills they have internally. Upskilling is another major conversation taking place right now, and it's hard to know how to upskill if you don't know where people are currently.
Right.
Qualified enables that.
Because the skills gap is widening, and you are somebody involved in the technical skills space, so you have to make sure that the kind of talent you're seeding out are the best possible ones?
That's exactly right. And really, it's not about, I'd say over the past decade, there's been a lot of conversation around like top 1, 2, 3% talent.
Right.
It's actually a meaningless conversation.
Why?
Well, it's meaningless because what matters is what is the probability of success between a given person and a given job. So one person might be top 1% for one role, but top 30% for a totally different role.
Right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So the culture of the company matters, the type of the job, the way the team is structured matters. And so you have to think about those things, because what matters for both the job seeker and the company is not how good either is, but how successful they are together. And you need meaningfully more data, and that's why we spend so much time looking at both sides, but also how people perform over time and who's successful in a given company, because you need to look at that holistically in order to understand probability of success, which is ultimately all that matters.
How do you think through, because of the Qualified and Kasana acquisitions, how do you think through a CEO, this is an acquisition we should make, or we can build this out internally and not go out there and acquire somebody who's already doing this successfully?
Totally. It comes down to speed and cost, which doesn't sound very sexy, I know. But what you're looking at is, what would it take for you to recreate that thing? If it's on your roadmap and you want to stick to your plan, but if it's in your plan, if it's on your roadmap, and it could accelerate you faster and more effectively than you'd be able to do it on your own, it's worth taking seriously. And so, we thankfully are in a really strong position now, given sort of that we have been at this for a while longer, and we're at more of a level of scale where we're able to bring global talent to companies, but we're also able to think more strategically about the ways that we increase the value for the companies and talent, both of whom we consider customers of ours, for us to increase the value we're able to drive for both sides of the marketplace. And in doing that, we have to think about, could we buy or build something that is going to enhance that value? And oftentimes, if you find the right team that's working on a problem and has been working on it for years that can help accelerate your time frame, it makes sense to think about that strategically.
All right, in the time we have left, you're the perfect person to ask this about your projections for the future of remote work. I'm sure you'll say first, it's here to stay. You were doing this in 2014 before anybody knew what that was.
Yeah.
So naturally, that I'm sure. But what do you think are the trends, projections for remote work, the borderless workforce, and where it's heading globally?
I think if you take a step back and think about it through the lens of first principles, this all becomes a lot simpler. If you think about reducing your cost base, again, by 20, 30%, but increasing the talent pool dramatically. And you think of a world where increasingly you will be able to quantify the output of more and more roles, and already can largely with technical roles. It's hard to imagine a world where most companies don't think of remote as a not just viable, but critical part of their talent strategy.
Right.
Are there times when it's less necessary or less appropriate? Look, I love being in a group of 5 people in a garage thinking through problems. There's energy you get from that. We don't talk enough about the psychological power of being around people. I would much rather be here with you, Larry, right now having this conversation than be on Zoom.
Right.
We both
Naturally.
spend too much time
Me
on
too.
Zoom.
Yes.
That is valuable. But that doesn't mean that in a day-to-day office environment you need 5 days a week of being next to someone to build strong relationships or to understand productivity. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's more than just here to stay. I think 10 years from now we're going to have virtual reality and augmented reality which feels so good that it's going to feel like we're having this conversation, but we actually will be on different continents.
Right.
At that point, it's completely obvious that you don't need to be next to each other.
Are you trying to sell us on the metaverse? Somebody tried that already. It didn't work out.
And it will come about 2 or 3 more times, and eventually it will work. And
Right.
the question is when, not if. And is that a good or a bad thing? That's not my place to judge. Mm-hmm. But it's a thing. It's coming. And I think remote work is going to be a trend that you're going to see going back to basically pre-pandemic levels, where 3 to 5% additional software developers and technologists will be working remotely every year, and that will just continue gradually, and then all of a sudden spike
Right.
as technology gets to the point where it can enable it to the point where it feels as psychologically safe as being in an office.
All right, that is a good place to end it. Jeremy Johnson, thank you so much. This has been
Thank you,
fantastic.
Larry.
Please give him a big round of applause.
Thank
Thanks
you
a
all.
lot.